I went in with an expectation of what these kids would be like. I went in with an expectation of what uh, convicted or people that are on trial for murder would be like. And what we went in and saw were children, completely different than what the expectation was. So I would say, yes, probably the greatest benefit is a dialing down of my own prejudice, my own prejudging of what I went in thinking I'd see.
A little over 3 years ago, Gabe and I were invited to sit in on a writing class in a juvenile hall, the type of class that he's describing. I had no intention to do a documentary. He had no intention to teach a class. We were just invited as guests. We had this experience that he was talking about, had all of our expectations overturned, and it just, it stuck with me. And then I learned that there was a bill that was being introduced into the California state legislature, which was SB 260. So that got my wheels turning. If we could follow this bill and then tell the story of the people it affects, that could be a movie. Simultaneously, Gabe started thinking about, this idea for a class, and the screenwriting class. And as we moved forward with Inside Out Writers and with some other people that we knew that had connections with probation, it became clear that the only way we were going to get access was if we combined forces. So he put his class together, and I started petitioning to get permission to film the kids, which that was a very challenging process because you have to get them, their parents, and their judges. And I think the only reason that it happened actually is because they were being tried as adults. Because the judge that oversaw juvenile court said no. We petitioned for like 20 kids first in the beginning. He said no, like blanket no. And the only kids that were left were the ones that were being tried as adults. And they were under the jurisdiction of their individual criminal court judges. And some said no, and some said yes. Only a handful. The question was, Jared's defense attorney was so awful, did we manipulate that in the edit, basically? I wish that we did. I'll play you the whole 4 days of the trial, and you'd be pretty shocked.
You guys got a great glimpse from the film about the immaturity of kids, right, and sort of how they're playing around and they're just children. And then we transfer kids into the adult system that was designed for adults, right? When they're questioning Jared, the entire process has been set up for adult defendants who have a better sense of what their constitutional rights are, right? Children don't understand that. They don't realize that when they're in custody and being interrogated, that the impact of what they say can be used against them, right? Because they're kids. And then, they're also dealing with adults. And for us nationally, we do two things. So we work across the country with lawmakers to try and change laws like SB 260 to make sure that kids don't have life without parole sentences and can come up for individualized sentencing review before a judge or before a parole board within 10 to 15 years of their incarceration. But then we also work to make sure that children have access to adequate and great legal representation. Almost 50% of the kids that are serving life without parole sentences in the United States committed their offenses with an adult co-defendant. And surprise, surprise, the adult co-defendants uniformly get less severe sentences than the juvenile offenders, right? And that has to do, again, with how children interact with an adult criminal justice system that was designed for adults in the first place. And I wish I could say that, hearing this story is unique, but we hear these cases all over the country. Even in instances where the maximum punishment is life without parole sentences, some individual kids who are represented by attorneys still get the maximum punishments on a plea. So they plea out and they still get life without parole, which is unheard of. That's just the insanity of that, because usually when you're taking a plea deal, you're taking a plea deal to avoid a harsher punishment. But these kids are taking pleas and still getting the maximum punishments. And that goes to the quality of legal representation, as well as a very unfortunate and corrupt justice system. It wasn't necessary for the judge in Jared's case to impose a 200 and whatever it was year sentence to life, right? If the concern is public safety, you can still give a life sentence and have the child be reviewed at 15 years by a parole board. You're not endangering public safety, right? But you're giving that person hope at the end of that 15-year period so that they can come up and have a chance for a second life. And that's what we advocate for at the campaign, but I just wanted to add that bit about the lack of quality legal representation because it's a recurring theme with so many of the kids that are facing these terrible sentences.
What you could do is to go to your legislator and make sure that you monitor and put in place those mechanisms to make sure that your state legislators followed the law came down from the Supreme Court that stopped giving kids life without parole and giving them some hope. So after 10, 15, or 20 years, these kids got a chance to come back.
I think that the way that people who are on trial are portrayed in the media and you know, therefore in our minds is as hardened, tough sociopaths. The way that a lot of people are talking about, you know, in the SB 260 hearing, talking about them as mini Charlie Mansons, right? Talking about them as sociopaths. And so I went in thinking, and in fact, the first kid that I met, which was before the class happened, the first kid that I spent any significant time with really scared me. He told me about what he had done, and I'm watching him holding this pen, and I'm imagining him stabbing it into my neck. And I think that that particular kid in that particular instance happens to be somebody that's very troubled. But when I went in and taught this class to these kids and spent 20 classes with them, which was something along the lines of 60 hours or 80 hours or something, so quite a lot of time spent personally getting to know them. You run into the kids that Ben shows so well who are showing lifestyles of the rich and famous and saying like, this fountain, whatever you picture is gonna come out of there. Of course, it's just water, talking about, filming sex acts and giving it to you for your memory. So, I mean, the kid, and then each one of them is so different. I mean, I wouldn't paint with too broad a brush. My experience of those three particular kids is that each of them is a very different part of the process of understanding and coming to grips with what they've done. And I think that that's what happens when we personalize things, right? We go in with, again, that broadly painted idea of what something is, and then when you get to know someone as an individual, it erases those ideas and nuance becomes reality.